Hello, my name's Faye. This is Faye's Parallel Stories. It is boiling hot in my flat. I am sitting in a very awkward position on a chair that should be comfortable, and I thought I'd do my July reading wrap up. July was meant to be about reading science fiction for me. I did read some science fiction, more like speculative fiction. I found that science fiction with robots and space travel and ships and all that kind of stuff. Hard science isn't really something I tend to sort of be attracted to, but I gave it a good go. The TBR that you can check out on my channel was very misleading, but yeah, the first book, I'll just jump right in and work my way through chronologically, that I read was Boyfriend Material by Alexis. Has nothing to do with sci-fi, although I was in a science fiction and fantasy bookshop yesterday and they had a different book by Alexis Hall on the shelves, so apparently there is stuff available. This though, Boyfriend Material, I got as an advanced e-arc from NetGalley, which was great, and it is a male-male romance about the son of a, once very famous rock star and him needing a fake boyfriend to keep his job, essentially. And the fake boyfriend he ends up having is this perfect, uptight, lovely lawyer. And they fall in love because it's a romance novel and they have to. The writing was really, really funny. It's set in London, really witty, did have me chuckling. There's an amazing sort of cast around the two male protagonists, a sort of friend group that was lovely. The mother figure of one of our two main characters is a really cool sort of hippie, and they have a lovely, slightly obsessive but lovely mother and son relationship. What did I not love about this story? Oh yeah, fake dating is one of my favourite romance tropes. I really like how fake dating gets us to have two people who have a form of attraction, obviously, immediately move beyond small talk and get to know each other sort of really, really fast. I really like that. But in this book, they sort of start up with the breakup talk from day one. They haven't even started the whole fake dating project yet, and that bugged me. Like, the main character is really, really angsty. Sometimes that's fine. I got a bit annoyed by it and ended up, I think, settling on a 3 out of 5, even though from the writing it was like a romance novel that I really, really enjoyed, but ended up getting a bit fed up at times with the two characters. That was the first book I read. Then I'm gonna have a look at my little book. The second book I read was The Power by Naomi Alderman. This was super, super fun because it was a book I buddy read with a really good friend of mine, and yeah, we're currently still trying to isolate ourselves to a certain extent, and we did 2 Zoom conversations about The Power, which was a really fun idea. It was a bit experimental for us, so we agreed on a date by which we would have read half the book, a quite organic halfway point of the book actually. So then we also at that meeting got to talk about what did we think would still come in the story. That worked out really well. Unfortunately, preemptively already saying this, I'm sort of settling on a 3 out of 5 stars. I think my friend Anna was more like 2 out of 5 stars. The plot is really cool. The idea that one day in our future, presumably, I don't know, the timing is kind of unclear, women develop a sort of electrical current that they can shoot out. They only need to touch another person and they can harm them. So this topples the whole gender dynamic. It's a really interesting thought to think about what happens to the whole world if women become physically superior to men. That was really interesting. There are some interesting characters, but that's sort of where it also slightly starts coming undone for me, because we both felt the ending was not that satisfying to a certain extent, because the character development of these different women, one man, is interesting, and then towards the end some of them do things that didn't really quite agree with. You might really appreciate The Power because it does have chapters from different points of view. I know a lot of people like that. I like that as well. It also has, to a very small extent, a sort of mixed media format. There's sort of like pictures and paintings of assumed like architectural finds, because this is sort of this almost like an alternate history book in a way. I think it's usually shelved as like speculative fiction, dystopia, difficult to really peg. I thought the ideas were amazing, fell slightly under my expectations when it came to the execution though, unfortunately. Oh yeah. The third book I read was The AI Who Loved Me by Alyssa Cole. And this was a really like happy find. I was just sort of like checking out what other people were reading for the Tome Infinity and Beyond readathon in July. So centered around reading science fiction. And this is a sci-fi romance novella. Usually not really my jam, but I gave it a go. And The AI Who Loved Me is by Alyssa Cole. And our main character, Trinity, some kind of PTBS happened to her. I feel like that's not too much of a spoiler. We do sort of know that there's something not quite right with her in the beginning, and she falls for the new cousin nephew that's come to visit her neighbor who she really likes. And is this a spoiler? No, this is a novella. Yeah, but the title gives it away. He is not human. And somehow this was like really fast paced. Again, there's two really great like best girlfriends of our main character Trinity. We want to know what's happened. It's a novella. It has to be fast paced. You do get rewarded very quickly. Only like, this is not even criticism. This is more me feeling slightly icky about reading about sexual attraction between a human and an AI. Somehow I thought that was a bit off. So then, I mean, it is on the page. There is discussion of like, what does consent really mean if the AI are like programmed to never harm humans and do what humans tell them, you know? If like a human tells a robot, like, get down with me, they can't say no, but they are sentient. Difficult. But it was really cool. Next to like her AI love interest, there is another artificial intelligence that is like installed in everyone's homes, and that was almost the character that I liked the most. I recommend it if you are into romance, more so than sci-fi, I gotta say. Then I moved on to Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This one I read because loads of people have read it, loads of people recommend it. It's the first of the Earthseed trilogy. Earthseed, that's different author. And Parable of the Sower is set in a dystopian future, although the timestamp in the book is 2024, and we follow our main character, Lauren, I believe, and she almost grows up in a gated community within this dystopian setting. There's extreme depiction of poverty on the page, also murder, pillaging, rape, it's all there. But it was really interesting reading about this gated community that is sort of self-sufficient, and they educate themselves, but they constantly live in fear. They are not wealthy, they are just better off than the people surrounding them. At the beginning of this book was really slow, in my opinion. It's written in a sort of diary style, Lauren's diary, and usually I really like that, but I didn't really jam with her as a character. She is, you could argue this is like a YA setting, although when this book was written no one cared about YA as a genre, so let's scratch that. She is a teenager, and sort of her interest in boys, just like, I don't care. A central aspect of this book is that she begins to develop her own religion, and that is something I find very difficult to read about. I found some of the introductory so the beginning of the chapters usually have some kind of quote of sort of verse that she's written, and I don't know, they didn't do it for me. Sometimes I didn't really get how that really drove the story on. Sort of halfway through the book, the setting changes, and that sort of was then more interesting to me. Not motivated to read on, unfortunately, which is a shame because this is the first in a series. And a little bit disappointed because so many people seem to love this book. It just wasn't for me. Fortunately, the next book I read, you could also claim was a novella. Seems to be a thing this month. And I absolutely, gushingly adored it. And that's The Deep by Rivers Solomon. This was written by Rivers Solomon, but they had help or used a song, I believe, written by others. I wrote down that the book is has been created in conjunction with David Diggs, William Hudson, Jonathan Snipes. I am yet to actually research what they did, but this was so lovely. The story centers around the Wajinru, which are a people, creature, merfolk that are the descendants of pregnant African women thrown off ships, basically, pregnant slaves, and these babies are saved from the dying mothers' bodies from whales. Wow. And grow up underneath the sea, and yeah, the characters switch perspective. We have we sort of do have our main character who is unsure whether she wants to be the historian of her people, which means that she once a season, year, I don't actually remember, and takes in, no, she always takes in all the memories of everyone, that's it, sorry, relieving the others of the burden of having to remember pain, their horrible history, and then at a certain festivity, she shares the memory with everyone, and then every time this festivity has passed, she knows what awaits her again, and she sort of struggles with wanting to run away. Is it better to live oblivionally, blissfully free of any memory, or is this hardship something one carries and has to bear the burden, because only this way you can sort of develop and move towards a brighter future? I mean, incredibly symbolic, of course. I think parts of it perhaps I couldn't feel as deeply as a different reader would. I feel a bit like I am appreciating the prose and the story, but maybe it might even speak even more true to someone else. I warmly recommend it to anyone. Rivers Solomon is a non-binary author, and that also shines through in parts of the text. Really, really interesting. Interesting sounds so needlessly intellectual. It's beautiful to read. I didn't have any problems with the text. Some people said that they found it so difficult to get into. I thought it was beautiful, just sort of letting the sentences flow. One of my favourite books of the year so far. And then after that, I was a bit unsure what to really pick up, to be honest. And on my Scribd app for free, just saw that there was The Giver by Lowry. And this sci-fi classic is a book I've never read. Loads of teenagers read this, I believe, if they go to school in America, which I didn't. And this is a sort of utopian setting as we start off, and children go through a really regimental schooling track, with every year bringing some kind of new task or possibility, and our main character, I believe he turns 12, and that is the year in which people get their profession assigned to them, and he becomes the giver. no, the receiver at first for the giver, soon to be the next giver. And I guess I'm spoiling the book to a certain extent, but I feel like everyone knows this. I was the one to catch up. His task is similarly to the Deep, actually, to hold everyone's pain, the pain of the history, war, famine, murder, heartbreak, the pain you feel when a bone breaks. Literally every dimension of pain, but also happiness and love and colour. And the idea I thought was beautiful, but it read a lot like a children's book, even though there are quite painful, sorry for that silly use of the word, parts on the page. I think I would have preferred the book if I had been younger. It was a bit simplistic. None of the other characters are really fleshed out, and I can't say that I would want to read on. Again, this is the first in, I think there's a second and a third, I'm not actually sure, but there's an afterword in the edition that I read that spoils the entire thing, so there's no need for me to read on either. Yeah, so The Giver, for me, a sort of well-meaning 3 out of 5 stars, because I know that this book means a lot to many, many people. I'm glad I read it, sort of feel like I filled a gap in my pop culture knowledge, but yeah, wasn't blown away, unfortunately. Currently I'm still working my way through How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. I'm just over halfway through. I wanted to finish it this month, but short stories didn't really work for me that much. Sort of the treacherous thing about short stories was that I thought I would just finish off one after the other every day, fly through it, but I found that once I'd finished a short story I didn't really want to pick up a next. So far, with almost every short story I've read, I kind of wish it was a novel. There are beautiful ideas and they're really fascinating worlds painted of different forms of society, but then it sort of stops after the sort of 20-page mark. Yeah, not slightly disappointed. Sorry, but maybe disappointed because I want more. So that's not harsh criticism. Those were all the books I read in July. Now I'm going to stop filming because I am boiling hot, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.